Hi everyone, Matt here from Sisu. So I wanted to give you an update on how the month of wellbeing's going. Trying to practice what I preach for a month at least, hopefully longer. And give you an update on that. I know that I said that I'd give you an update after 3 days since the previous video. It's a little bit longer than that. There's a reason for that, which I'll talk about in just a second. But also I thought I could use this video to share with you some more research that I've been looking into that looks at the impact of macro level events on our psychology. And a really interesting study that I want to tell you about that looks at how our goals and values shift during something like a global pandemic. So hang on for that bit. So first up, let's look at how the month of wellbeing's going. And I'm going to start with a bit of an admission. So in the previous video, I was starting the measurement. And one of the things that I was doing was I was setting up my first beat device, so that heart rate variability device. So I wore the device for the first day. And then I realised it wasn't working. Now, that's nothing to do with the device itself. It's completely my fault. So what I'd done was I'd connected the wrong electrodes to it and it hadn't collected the data that I wanted it to. Plus, I didn't have the electrodes that I needed, so I couldn't continue the measurement going forward. It's a real shame. Obviously, when I work with clients, that never happens because we use the devices through Firstbeat themselves, whereas I was setting this up myself, but I thought I'd just admit that I messed it up on this occasion. But what I've done instead is used one of our other products, which is known as the Spotlight on Wellbeing report, to at least give me a bit of a subjective measure of my well-being physically, psychologically and socially at the start of this month. So I filled in the questionnaire and I got my results back that looks at levels of life satisfaction, how I'm feeling physically, my current levels of estimated fitness based on some of the questions that I answered, but also levels around psychological well-being and social well-being as well. And I'm sharing some of the results with you now on screen so you can see the percentages are there. And the plan over the next few weeks will be to try and improve those. Can we move them up in a measurable way? In addition to that, just to give myself even more data to work with, I also recorded some vital statistics of things like my weight, my hip to waist ratio. I also recorded my resting heart rate, just to give me something a bit more objective that I'll be able to track over time. The plan is to order the electrodes that I need for the Firstbeat device, so I'm still going to do that. And once I set that up, I'll wear it for a few days and I will still share the results with you. The good news is I've been sticking to some of the habits. So I've used the new Habit app. So I set up a number of different habits that I wanted to repeat on pretty much a daily basis. There was one big habit that I wanted to break before all of this started, and that was coming off of Twitter, at least for a month, okay? It was something that was just kind of getting to me, I guess. I think all of the furore around Dominic Cummings and all of that story was a bit of a low point for me on Twitter, and it just got to the point where I felt like it was having more of a negative impact than a positive one. So the first thing I did was I deleted the Twitter app from my phone, and I've not been on it for the last 3 or 4 days, which is felt quite good actually. I don't think I'm missing out. I'm still obviously keeping up with the news and reading websites and all the rest of it, but I don't think I need that the comments, the stream of comments and people's consciousness that I was getting from Twitter. It felt a bit toxic at times. I might go back on it in future, but at the moment I'm happy to have a break. So in addition to that, I set up another set of habits. So some are around exercise. I was really interested in my levels of energy. Is there something I can do physically that will help me out psychologically? So some of them are around doing some exercise. I'm going to try and exercise every day, even for a little bit every day. You've got to start somewhere. In addition to that, doing things like 100 sit-ups and 20 press-ups, just to give me something a bit more concrete to aim for every day. And I have, as you can see, been sticking to some of that. Diet is the next one. So my vice is chocolate, so I'm trying to avoid chocolate. I'm moving from I can't to I don't, building it around my identity. So rather than saying I can't eat chocolate this month, it's I don't eat chocolate in June. I'm going to have a new identity around that. And so far, fingers crossed, it seems to be working. I'm 4 days off chocolate, and we'll see if that sticks over time. And then finally, there was a bit more around some of the psychological things. The main one being putting my phone to bed. Maybe linked to link to the Twitter thing that I talked about before, but I've got a terrible habit of scrolling through my phone mindlessly at night, and it sometimes affects how I sleep. So at 9 o'clock, I'm trying to take the phone upstairs, plug it into the wall, and put that to bed before I come up, so I don't see it for the rest of the evening. There's been a little less success on that. I've managed to do it a couple of times out of the 4 days. It's a real kind of difficult habit to shift, I guess, just because so many things are on my phone. But I'm going to try and stick to that habit even more in the weeks going forward, because I do think that can make quite a difference. So that's where I'm up to in terms of the month of wellbeing. I'll give you another update hopefully in a few days' time, give you a chance to find out how I'm getting on. Hopefully I'll set up the Firstbeat device relatively soon as well, once the electrodes arrive, and I can share some of that with you. And then let's see if we can make a measurable improvement to wellbeing over even 4 weeks. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to share with you was that really interesting piece of research that I found that looks at the psychological impact of macro level events like a pandemic. And the thing I wanted to talk about during this video is something that's known as socio-emotional selectivity theory. What a mouthful. Have you heard of it? No, neither had I. So the idea behind this theory is that actually time horizons and our perception of time actually impacts our goals and even our values. And I found this really interesting. It doesn't just affect people during like a global crisis. It affects people at all times based on, for example, their age. So one of the things that we know through some great research that people have done is that people's goals shift over time based on their age. And what we generally find is that younger people have more future-orientated goals. It's all about, what do I want to achieve? What do I want to learn? What information do I want to gather? There, the focus is more towards those types of goals. Whereas older people, it's more towards meaningful, purposeful goals. You know, how I'm going to spend time with the people that I love more. And they think the mechanism for this may actually be the way in which you perceive your life and how long you have left, put simply. And what they're saying there is that younger people feel like they've got forever. So, you know, I can learn something new and I can kind of spend time with my family in the future. I've got plenty of time. Whereas older people, because they're more aware of the finality and potentially the fragility of life, instead, every day matters a bit more. And I really just want to spend that doing something that's emotionally meaningful to me. They've done some really interesting studies that have shown this, but so what they do is they get people to choose who they would rather spend 30 minutes free time with. So do they want to spend that 30 minutes free time with an author of a book they've just read? Do they want to spend it with a new acquaintance they've just made but who they seem to have a good connection with? Or do they want to spend that time with a close family member, someone who they know really well? So what you're showing there is whether people are more drawn towards finding out new information, perhaps spending their time with the author, exploring future possibilities, so spending time with a new acquaintance, or spending the time with the most emotional potential, with the close family member. And again, what they've shown is that this changes with age. So older people, so their definition of old is over 56. Sorry, but that's what they find in the research. Over 56, you start to pick more time with the family rather than middle age or younger people who would spend time with the author or with the new acquaintance. So that's interesting in itself, but what's really interesting is how that's affected by macro level events. So those things naturally change over time based on our age, but what we find is that when something hits on a large social scale, so something like they've looked at the impact of the SARS outbreak in 2003 in Hong Kong, and also the 9/11 attack in 2001 in the US. And what they're able to do is track people's goal orientation over those periods of time. And what's really interesting is that actually shifts. So younger people shift into the category where they are focusing more towards emotionally meaningful goals. The difference between younger and old people disappears. So older people retain the focus on emotionally meaningful goals, so that stays the same. But younger people, the gap disappears. And they actually found that after those events, this effect persisted for 4 months after those events happened. So for 4 months afterwards, younger people were still wanting to spend more time with the family rather than with the author or with the new acquaintance, perhaps. So the mechanism behind that is that younger people will be primed towards an ending. So because they're made aware of the finality of life, because maybe they see a news story that this can affect young people as well as old, it starts to get them thinking in a slightly different way. Now, I think all of this is interesting, and I wonder whether we can leverage it in some way. There's a risk, actually, that it could affect people negatively, that younger people in particular may see an incongruence between the goals that I usually have and now how I'm feeling, and that may cause a little bit of anxiety. But actually, potentially if we embrace it, if we say, do you know what? This is an opportunity for me to focus on the things that really matter. What about my purpose? What about my meaningful goals? What about the emotionally close relationships that I have? Maybe I'm just going to focus some more time on that. And if we're aware of that, the awareness can help us to leverage it to our advantage, I think. Who knows what will happen with the current pandemic? Hopefully there's some clever researchers out there who are tracking this during what's going on at the moment. We'll be able to shed some light on that. But yeah, I hope that you found it as interesting as I did today. Anyway, I'll be back with another update on the month of wellbeing to let you know how I'm getting on. And I've got some more research to share with you in the future about the psychological impact of the coronavirus. Remember to like and subscribe. Keep forgetting to do that. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel and comment. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on anything that I've discussed today. I'll see you soon.